Hey everybody. So I'm going to do a video that it's going to get very little editing from me, if any. Well, it's going to have some because I'm going to put some images on screen. So I've been listening to the audiobook of this audiobook. It's by a guy named Tim Urban, who apparently has been doing this sort of thing for a while. But I'd never heard of him until this book, crossed my radar, or, on my screen. I don't remember how I heard about it. But, I listened to the sample on Audible, and I thought, yeah, I'll take that. I'm here with a dog, and I'm as far from the road as I can get without getting too close to a neighbor's property who they also have dogs who sometimes get out, and they have got like, I don't know, 5, 10, I don't know how many dogs they have. They have a lot of dogs. Anyway, Tim Urban and the book, and I can see the orange golem on the cover of the book, but I, for some reason, have a block on the title, but it's on screen. And the thing that I like about this book, one, this is a bad habit. I know people post links to things for me to take in, usually on the topic of AI, and I'll start to take it in, and it'll be this... it'll be somebody who's just cherry picking little pieces of stories from AI and then slotting it into a pre-made ideological structure to shore up their existing point of view. And the thing that I'm trying to communicate to most people is that we've got all these ideas in our head about artificial intelligence that come to us through science fiction. And as much as I love science fiction, no science fiction author can actually see the future. And, nobody really saw that these systems would get competent before they got smart. That they would have sophisticated strategies, like they would have a theory of other minds without having a mind themselves. Nobody saw this coming. And when I see somebody who is just, cherry picking, bits here and there to support a pre-existing belief structure, I can't watch it. I try, and basically when somebody sends me something like that, I'm saying, well, yeah, it was a 15-minute video. I got through 2 minutes and 88 seconds. I've become very intolerant of that stuff. I was going to talk about Tim Urban's book, but I guess instead I'll talk about this episode, not an episode, but a segment of 60 Minutes. Now, I don't watch 60 Minutes. Come on, it's boomer media, but they did a story on AI, and I was curious to see what they were going to say, and it was actually pretty decent. With any television, any sort of television informational programming, their paradigm is to take a very small quantity of information and stretch it out over a long period. So you get lots of B-roll footage of, humanoid robots on the tabletop playing soccer, just one-on-one, but actually scoring goals. And, if you're interested in a topic and you go to YouTube, you'll find media that is information dense. Somebody's written a script and they're trying to get in as much information in as few words as possible and make it in as short a period of time as possible. And it's just the opposite on TV, which is why I just, if there's a topic I'm interested in, mainstream television is the last place I want to look, because I'm just going to get so bored waiting for new tidbits of information amidst all the filler and fluff. And, 60 Minutes, it's for boomers and older, and yeah, it's a lot of fluff. But the information they provided was pretty good. Mostly, the thing that, I think people need to understand, we have this sort of maxim or an axiom of thought about computers, and it is they only do what we program them to do. And in the past, that was true. Now, we did still get unexpected behavior out of them, particularly when you have multiple systems interacting with each other. But that's just not true anymore. With trained algorithms, it's simply not true that they only do what we tell them to do. And in fact, they develop competences in areas that they were not optimized for, that they were never intentionally trained for. Suddenly they have these whole suites of skill sets that just emerged, emergent behavior, which they actually used, I think they used that terminology on 60 Minutes. And they did cover that on 60 Minutes. And if they get that one piece, if they get that one piece of information out to people in a digestible way, hooray. So I thought it was a pretty good segment. I was actually pretty impressed with it. Now, Tim Urban's book. I like it. All that was an aside, because I like Tim Urban's book because he's articulating things that I already believe, which is a dangerous thing to do. I really should take in media that I expect to disagree with, but I don't have the discipline for it, I have to say. I'm in a world, same world you're in, where if I want it, I can just, pull to refresh, pull my thumb down the screen and get a whole new page of stuff that the algorithms have decided I'm probably going to like because either, it's visually appealing or it's an articulation of a belief that I already hold, but in a way that I couldn't do myself. Speaking of which, Peter Zion released a video today talking about AI, and he kept getting GPT wrong. I think he was saying GDP or I don't know. I mean, he wasn't saying GPT. Every time he tried to say it and got it wrong, they had to put it up on screen what he was actually trying to say, which is funny to me because, this is just indicative of the fact that, yeah, he pays attention to a lot of different topics, and this is one that he's not really paying attention to, but somebody on his team is. So he had some worthwhile insights on the topic, but they're clearly not his, because he's just clearly not really interested in this topic, not following it very closely. But back to Tim Urban. I get impatient with trying to push everything onto a left-right spectrum. And Tim is equally, apparently, impatient with it and has given it more thought than I have, or has given alternatives more thought than I have. Now, you're probably familiar with the political compass quiz. It's got the usual left-right axis, but then there's a vertical axis, which is, I guess, freedom at the top and social control at the bottom. So the quiz is kind of, it's put out by libertarians, and it is structured in a way to get you to think about, how much social control you want applied to you by your government. And so it's designed, I think, to lead people to see the merits of libertarianism. Adding an extra dimension is good. Doing so in a motivated fashion, not as good, but still, I think the political quadrant representation is better than just the straight left-right, because the straight left-right, you try to squash everything onto that line, and things just get so distorted. So he's offered a two-dimensional space for defining people's, not just their ideas, not just what they think, but how they think, which I think is very important. So he's got this ladder of thinking. And on the top rung are the people who, they clearly distinguish between a person and their ideas. And you can have respect for a person and think they're wrong about something. Whereas at the bottom rung of this 4-rung ladder, you've got a very tribal, a very primitive sort of relationship to ideas. Because in our ancestral environment, which is what we are, adapted and well suited to, not the modern environment, the environment didn't change very quickly. And information that was passed down to you culturally from your parents and grandparents applied because it was hard won, and it was basically, the beliefs were also shaped by natural selection. The beliefs that led people to reproduce are beliefs that spread, and beliefs that cause them to, fail to reproduce, either by dying young or not impressing a mate or whatever, whatever behavior the beliefs led to that didn't result in you having children, those beliefs, were not well suited to the environment. They didn't persist. It was, what's the word I'm looking for? It was adaptive. It was adaptive to not question your beliefs, and also to identify yourself and your tribe with your language, your customs, the particular tales that you guys told, your pronunciations of words, even in languages that were shared with neighbors. That's the origin of the concept of the shibboleth. Shibboleth, and I don't have the exact players right, but there was a battle, and people were fleeing across a river. And one side, they wanted to kill one tribe and not the other. And so they told everybody coming out of the water, say the word shibboleth, because, one tribe pronounced the TH at the end and another didn't. And the people who didn't pronounce it the right way got killed, and the people who did got through. So a shibboleth now is something that you say, not because, you think it's interesting or innovative or creative or particularly smart. You just say it because it identifies you as being a member of a particular tribe. And that's where we get HR speak. Some people passionately believe all that stuff, and others just go along to get along. And if you say something, to say something which is going along to get along, it's a shibboleth. So, Tim, back to Tim Urban. He's got this 4-rank structure. So at the top, you've got the very above the line thinking, he calls it. This is high level thinking where you are distinguishing ideas from allegiances, and you are free to experiment with ideas, you are free to try things out, and if you form a community with other people who have this same mentality, what you end up with is a community that he calls a think tank. And again, think tanks are places where you have ideas, you share them with other people, you examine them with other people. You might be in a disagreement with somebody else, but you're not angry at them because you don't identify them with the point of view that they are articulating. You identify them as another member of your community who is collaboratively examining ideas with you, finding which ones are fit and which aren't. And at that top level, the archetype that occupies that top rung is the scientist. Below the scientist is the sports fan. And the sports fan, I like this analogy, they have a preference. They have a team. They have a dog in this fight. They have, an interest, and they want one side to win over the other. They want one set of ideas to emerge victorious over the other, but they respect the score. If their team is down by 5 points, even the sports fan will admit, yes, my team is losing the game. And the sports fan knows their team can lose the game. They want their team to win. So they're sort of motivated in their thinking, but they're also taking input from the external world and changing their mind as the circumstances dictate. Now, below, on the second rung from the bottom, below the sports fan, and the sports fan and the scientist are above the line, the line that represents the horizontal axis, and then the next two below, the one just below the line is the lawyer. The lawyer is assigned to a side. Now, they can think, they can make distinctions, they have intellectual suppleness, but they're not changing their mind. They're on a team. If you're a lawyer and you are a defense attorney, and this is something he says in the book, you never stand up and say, wow, the prosecutor has made some really good points. You know what? I think my client is guilty. A defense attorney just can't say that, because they're on a team. They don't have that flexibility, but they can still think. Below the lawyer, though, and I forget what he calls this bottom layer, but this is the very tribal attitude where you identify with your beliefs and you identify, other people with their beliefs, such that if they think something that you don't like, something that you don't believe, you hate them because they are the personification of that evil belief. And so when people thinking at this level get together, particularly online, particularly on social media, where the high-level thinkers, when the scientists, when they get together and they compare ideas, you get the think tank. At the lowest extreme, an intellectual environment formed by this level of thinking is the familiar echo chamber. You say what you know is approved, and you hear it said over and over and over again because all the people that you're interacting with are also, representing the tribe. And they are saying things to establish their credibility within the tribe. They are not examining ideas. They are not open to new information. They're not the sports fan. They don't respect the scoreboard. It doesn't matter what's on the scoreboard. Their team is right, which means their team is winning. And, the scientist looks at A and sees where A leads, when they're acting. I'm not talking about working research scientists. I'm talking about the mentality of the scientist. If they go from A to B, it's because A leads to B. The sports fan really wants B. They really want it. But if A leads to C, or if A leads to A prime or whatever, and that's what's on the scoreboard, they recognize and accept it. The lawyer, starts at B and says, how can we generate A from B? Because B is where we're going. And, the tribal person at the very bottom of the ladder just says B. And if you say anything otherwise, you're evil and I hate you. So what I like about this, one, it does introduce a vertical axis to the whole left-right thing. But you've got scientist left and right, sports fan left and right, lawyer left and right, and tribal person left and right. And when I say tribal person, I'm not talking about indigenous people. I'm talking about people in the modern world who who identify themselves with their beliefs and the beliefs of their subculture. Or, their subculture could be the main culture, the dominant culture, but it's still not everybody, This system describes, what you believe, Like if you're a flaming leftist, but you will listen to other people's arguments and you will adjust your positions based on new information that you get, which makes you, if you're just below the line, the lawyer; if you're just above the line, the sports fan. And I think most of us should aim to be sports fan most of the time, because we're not going to be totally open. We're not going to be in this scientific mode all the time. Real scientists aren't. Working professional scientists don't live their whole life in that space. The scientific research community keeps them in that space enough of the time that science works. But scientists are still human for the moment. But you can have left and right positions that occupy any of these four positions in terms of in any of these four levels, which are not describing what you think, but how you think. And that, I think, is enormously important. And I'll leave it there.